What I'm about to show you here is hands down the most common misunderstanding when it comes to braking. As I approach 700 hours of one-on-one coaching, I've never had one student who didn't make this mistake before coming to see me. And I kid you not, their jaws all metaphorically hit the floor when they realised what they were doing wrong. And by the end of this video, so will yours. This isn't some secret that only top guys know. You can see it for yourself in telemetry and replays. But most people just go on their own instinct, which is 99% of the time wrong. But don't worry, I will explain all during the course of this video. What's up Gran Turismo fans, my name is Luke and I'm a driver coach for Digit Racing. And in this series I analyse your laps to show you where you are losing time and how to get faster. And I always select someone who is making an extremely common mistake, because that way the mistakes you see here are statistically likely to be your mistakes too. Each video in this series focuses on a specific driver rank, but the mistakes are common across all ranks, just to varying degrees. Today we are looking at Josh, who is a C rank driver, and he set a 141.590 at Dragon Trail Gardens in the Renault Megane, which at the time of recording this video on Thursday places him 9,330th global. With some simple fixes to this lap, Josh will easily find upwards of 1 second. As always, we're going to use both telemetry and replays to show you what's going on. And with this particular bad habit, the one I mentioned at the start, which I'm going to show you in the next corner, telemetry just doesn't do it justice to the untrained eye. So that's where we really need the replays. Usually I prefer to pick someone who is using the same car, but at C rank and below, that doesn't really matter. These two cars are similar enough that at this level, the fixes will carry over. So let's start with turn 1. Now there is a widely unknown technique to corners like this, and that is to turn before braking. This is something that only works for sweeping corners, and as such isn't very common. But Dragon Trail Gardens has 3 such corners. I'll show you this in the replay in a moment, but you can see here from the telemetry that Josh brakes first and then turns into the corner, whereas I turn into the corner and then I brake. Looking at the brake traces, we can also see that Josh holds too much brake pressure for too long, which has the effect of slowing the car down too much and actually creates understeer too. Josh is in blue here. And then if we look at the steering angle, you can see that Josh simply doesn't turn in enough in the entry to the corner and then doesn't turn enough through the entire duration of the corner. So keep an eye on these two numbers on the right hand side here. I'm in yellow, Josh is in blue. So you can see that I'm actually steering more than he is for the entire duration of the corner. So to keep it simple, the fixes for this corner would be turn before braking, brake less to carry more speed, and turn more. In other words, the car simply has more grip than you realise here. Now let's show you what this looks like in the replay. So you can see here that Josh has started braking before turning into the corner. And then if we move the replay forwards a little bit, and let's go in car. Look at that steering angle, okay? And we're going to compare this to mine in a moment. And because he rides the brake for too long, brakes too early, and doesn't turn in enough, the car just understeers through the corner. And then he gets on the power to compensate for that, but by this time the car has slowed down way too much. And again, let's take a look at the steering inputs. There we go. So that right hand is around about 1 o'clock. And look at the track limit usage on the inside as well. You can see we're not using the curb at all. Definitely need to use more track here. Now, if we look at my replay, this is the moment that I've started braking. And as you can see, I have significantly turned into the corner. The crucial point here is that I have turned in and shifted the weight to the outside wheels before I hit the brakes. What that does is it stabilizes the car when you hit the brakes and allows you to use even less brake pressure. Do take note though that you do have to lift off the throttle in order to enable the car to turn. If you try to turn in on full throttle, the car simply won't turn. So you can see here I'm using a lot more steering angle through the corner. My right hand actually comes up to almost about 12 o'clock, and that's because I'm carrying a lot more speed and need to turn the car more. And if we look at the track limits, you can see that I'm using a lot more curb. Now you can actually use more curb than this. I made a little bit of a mistake on this particular lap. But once again, if we're just going to summarize turn 1, turn before braking, don't drag the brake for so long, get off the brake earlier so that the car will rotate, turn more through the corner, and carry more speed through the corner. Right, I know you're dying to know what is the jaw-dropping mistake that I'm talking about. It's riding the brake too deep into the corner. Let's look at the turn 2, 3 and 4 sequence, basically the setup and entry to the chicane. The yellow brake trace here is me, and where the red line is parked, that's where I'm releasing the brake. The blue brake trace line here is Josh, and that's where he's releasing the brake. To the untrained eye, this means precious little. So if we look at it from above, it starts to make a little bit more sense. The sawtooth lines are where we're both braking, and you can see that's where I release the brake, and that's where Josh releases the brake. But I still don't believe this is fully visualized to the untrained eye. So let me show you in a replay, because this is key to why the corner is going wrong for Josh. So this is the exact frame in the video where Josh fully releases the brake pedal. And again, to the untrained eye, you're going to look at this and say, okay, so what's wrong with that? Explain it to me like I'm 5. And this is the exact frame in the video where I fully release the brake. So what's going on here? So if we go back to these brake traces, you can see that he almost brakes as hard as I do, but only for a very brief moment. He then trail brakes too quickly and then ends up holding 50% give or take for a very, very long time, very deep into the corner. Whereas I brake harder and then trail brake out more aggressively. What this does is it rotates the car. Josh's braking style here creates understeer. My braking style here creates rotation. Because Josh's braking style creates understeer, it makes you think that you're going too fast into the corner. It makes you think that you have to slow the car down more. So what you end up doing is staying on the brake even longer to eventually kill that understeer. Whereas actually, if you just trail brake more, the car will rotate at a higher speed without understeer. The second problem here is that he turns into the corner too late. So you can see I'm turning in and Josh turns in later than me. I cannot tell you how common this is. This again is literally every single student. I spend all day, Friday and Saturday, every single week telling people to turn in earlier, all the time. Go and ask any of my coaching students. People turn in too late in the misguided belief that it will widen and square off the corner for a better exit. But actually what happens is, with this braking style that Josh has, which is very common, and with too much steering input at the same time, you're breaching the friction circle. Not going to tell you what that is here, don't want to waste time, go and look it up. And the car just understeers. And you think the car's understeering because you're going too fast, but it's not. The corner can be done at a much faster speed just fine. The understeer is happening because you have too much brake and too much steering input. And the only way for you to kill that understeer, in your mistaken understanding, is to stay on the brake and slow the car down. This is why I keep saying in my videos that lower lobby drivers mistake understeer for speed. That's exactly what this is. So how do we fix this corner? Again, let's just super simplify the fix to this corner. A, turn into the corner earlier. Use a ghost for that one. If you're not sure where to turn in, Follow the ghost. 2. Did I say A and 2? Great. Trail brake more. Rather than riding the brake, brake harder and then pull the brake up as you turn into the corner, and you will feel the car rotating. So in conclusion, this is why Josh misses the apex. You can see we're nowhere near the curb there. Runs way too deep into the corner, has to try and cut back to the left to widen the entry into the chicane, which is what you shouldn't be doing. You should already be over to the left-hand side. I'll show you that in my replay in a moment. And all of this combines into compromising his entry into the chicane, and he misses this apex too. Yes, this is actually a missed apex. So in this corner, we should be going directly over that sausage curb. Let's take a look at my replay and you'll see the difference. So it's no exaggeration to say that the way you do this left-hander, the way you enter and apex this left-hander turn 2, is what sets you up to power out of the chicane really early. Now we'll explain that in a moment. Let's show you what happens here at turn 2. You can see that I am turning in much earlier. I am trail braking more aggressively. And as a result, the car rotates more. And you can see we've used a lot more of the track on the inside. We're using the curb on the inside. This now sets me up on the left-hand side without having to go deep and then switch back to the left-hand side to widen it. All of that just wastes time. You want to set yourself up on the left-hand side to begin with. What this now does, because I'm set up wide on the left-hand side, I can now rotate into the chicane and go straight over the sausage curb. Now, the answer to the next question is already on the screen. But where do you think the acceleration point for this chicane is? So I've asked people this in coaching when I've done coaching at this track. And some people have said roughly in the middle of the chicane. Some people have said just before the last curb. No, this is the acceleration point. You accelerate out of the chicane before you even enter it. The entry is the exit in that sense. So that's why you have to sacrifice turn 2 and set yourself up in the right position to begin with so that you can do this. Let's look at where I'm at full throttle. There we go. Full throttle when I've only just got onto the curb, and I stay on full throttle all the way through the chicane. Let's look at where Josh gets full throttle. So Josh is accelerating at the same point because he knows, he has figured out that you're meant to accelerate through the chicane, not out of the chicane. But because he compromised turn 2, which set him up with the wrong line entering the chicane, he can't get to full throttle as early as me. And how many times have I said it? It's not how early you get on the throttle, it's how early you get to 100% throttle. So let's see where Josh gets to 100%. There we go. Look at the difference. I was at full throttle here. That's where Josh is at full throttle. And that is why I pull away and gain, what, I don't know, 3-4 tenths of a second on the exit of the chicane. And this is possible because of what I did at turn 2. That's how you set up to be able to do this. Now, if you thought that was eye-opening, this one's going to blow your mind. Once again, we see the same braking style mistake. Josh starts trail braking too early. Again, he's in blue, and he drags that trail braking out for a really long time and then has to ride the brake really deep into the corner because he started trail braking way too early. Whereas I brake harder for longer and then trail brake more aggressively. Ignore the V-shaped dip at the start of the braking zone. I missed a gear and braked at my normal point, which meant I was braking too early. So then I had to back off the brake to compensate for that mistake. It just goes to show that there is no such thing as a perfect lap. Notice also that he doesn't coast. So if we put the red line at the point that he releases the brake, he's already on the throttle. Whereas that's where I release the brake and that's where I get on the throttle. So I'm coasting. In Gran Turismo, you need to coast in most corners. There are some corners where you don't coast, but the vast majority you do need to coast, which brings me back to the brake release point. We're going to look at that in the replay in a moment. Let's just look at it from above. Now this time his line actually starts off really good. So you can see here that his line coming into the corner is not that different from mine. He's actually turning into the corner a little bit earlier, a little bit tighter than me, but that's fine. If you trail brake properly, you can make his line work no problem. Okay, so at the moment, the line looks really good. The rotation looks really good, right? It looks very comparable. But then what happens, the moment I release the brake, look how my car suddenly rotates. There you go. Look at the trajectory of the cars and look how his car starts understeering. But notice that he is still on the brake. And just like turn 2, this is the very reason that his car is understeering and not rotating. So once again, this is the exact frame in the video where Josh fully releases the brake pedal. And as you can see, it's past the halfway mark of the corner. Now you might be saying, okay, Luke, that's an extreme example though, surely. No, it's really not. I see this all the time. What happens is there is a misunderstanding, a misguided belief that you should be trail braking up to about 40-45% of the way into the corner. In coaching, the vast majority of students tell me, because I pull it out of them, okay? I ask the question. The vast majority of students tell me that they believe you are meant to brake up to about just before the halfway point of the corner and then seamlessly get onto the throttle. That doesn't work in Gran Turismo, okay? Seamlessly going from the brake to the throttle works in iRacing, does not work in Gran Turismo. It's because of the really overpowered ABS. I'm not going to get into a deeper explanation than that in this video. So what happens if you actually try to brake up to about 40-45% into the corner? This is what actually ends up happening. You quite often end up braking past the 50% mark of the corner. And okay, fair enough. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're braking up to here, or up to here, or up to here. That's still too late, even if it is earlier than Josh. So this is the part that blows every coaching student's mind. Yep, that is where I have fully released the brake pedal. Josh was 55-60% into the corner. I have released the brake maybe 25% of the way into the full length of the corner. If you take it from the moment you turn in to the moment you fully straighten up, about a quarter of the way into the corner. I coast up to the halfway point of the corner. And I am literally on the throttle when Josh is still on the brake. Now, if you have ever chased a top 10 Ghost and they have vanished on the corner exit, you feel like you're with them in the braking zone and then they vanish on the corner exit, this is why. In corners like this, they are very frequently getting on the throttle when you are still on the brake. So let's simplify and summarize again. How does Josh fix this corner? How does someone like you fix this corner if you notice that you've got the same bad habits in your driving? And there is a very high degree of probability that you do. So, you need to brake harder for longer, then trail brake more aggressively, let the brake go earlier, coast into the corner, coast up to the halfway point. You will feel the car suddenly rotate, and with that, after a few practice goes, you will realize you can get onto the throttle more aggressively. I will point out that your braking point is crucial here. If you brake too early, you will not be able to stay hard on the brake, let it go aggressively, aggressive trail braking, let's say, and coast. You will feel the car going too slow. So therefore, you will end up trail braking in an extended, elongated way into the corner because you know the car's going too slow in the corner entry. You just don't know you know it. And that's the root cause of all of these problems. That's why you need to make sure that your braking point is near as makes no difference perfect. If you brake later into the corner, it will force you to stay harder on the brake for longer. Then you can try to brake more aggressively, coast, and get on the throttle more aggressively because you got more rotation. Simply put, riding the brake too deep into the corner creates massive understeer, and that is the reason that you struggle to get on the throttle aggressively. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, this is amazing stuff, Luke, but it makes me think, what do I need coaching for? For some people, that will be true. Just telling some people what to do is enough, but it's not for most people. You can tell people to brake here, turn there, coast here, etc. until you're blue in the face. Most people will struggle to apply this, even with clear and concise explanations. And the truth is, you're probably already thinking this. You're probably already thinking, I get it, Luke, but how do I actually do this? How do I know that? Because every single coaching student said the same thing. That's something I learned from almost 700 hours of one-on-one coaching. Bad habits die hard. As I said at the start of this video, this stuff is no secret. I can't gatekeep the correct driving technique for GT7 because it's freely available for everyone to see in telemetry and replays. The difference with coaching is that I train you to do this. In a video, all I can do is tell you to do it. It's then up to you to go and figure it out. And that's why my coaching is booked up for 2 months ahead, because I don't just tell you to brake here, turn here, etc. In coaching, I train you how to feel it and how to do it more intuitively. And that can only be done in a one-on-one setting. It cannot be done in a video. Now, for those of you who want more brake here, turn here advice, let's carry on with the rest of the lap. Again, for these sweeping turns, it's turn first, then brake, same as turn 1. You can see here from the telemetry that Josh's line is actually very good. I'll explain the line and the usual mistake in the replay in a second. There are some needed line tweaks. He doesn't quite use enough of the curbs, but fundamentally his line is very good. It's not his main time loss in this sequence. You can see here how much I pull away. So if we look at the brake traces, we can see the reason for this. So in the first braking phase, he brakes at about 80%. I only brake at about 40%. And again, he brakes for too long. He trail brakes out for way too long. In the second braking phase, he uses about 50%. I use maybe 10%. So again, like turn 1, the car has more grip than you realize. You don't need to slow the car down this much. Let's understand the racing line from the replay. The most common mistake here is that people run out way too wide in the right-hander. So you can see here that I keep the car to the right-hand side of the track. What we're doing here is we're sacrificing the first turn in order to set up for the second turn. Whenever you have a sequence of corners, you always have to sacrifice the first one and prioritize the last one. If you've got 3 corners in a row, it's the same principle. You sacrifice every single corner in order to optimize and prioritize the last one. Why do you do that? Because the last corner is the one that leads onto a power zone. And getting the best exit possible out of the last corner is where the lap time is. So the most common mistake here is that people run out to the left-hand side of the track here. And the moment you do this, you've lost 3/10, 4/10, maybe as much as half a second on the exit of the left-hander. It can't be recovered. And the reason that people do this is A, they don't understand the principle of sacrificing corners in a sequence and optimizing the last corner in a sequence. But secondly, they're uncomfortable with going slow through a corner. They feel like they should attack every corner at the limit. Let me explain that. If that left-hander did not exist, if we simply had this right-hand sweeping bend onto a power zone, then the correct line would be to run out wide in this corner like this. Attack the corner, come out of it as fast as possible, and then you'd be powering down a straight. In order to do that, in the next corner, you have to sacrifice this one. You can't do it in this corner. And that's something that feels alien to people because it requires you to do this corner slower than the car can otherwise do it. So keeping to the right hand side, this sets you up for the left-hander. Use the orange and black crash barrier on the right hand side as a turning marker. As soon as you're alongside that, you want to start turning. Dab the brake again. Cut across this curb. And exit. And now a quick word about how to manage these curbs, because I already know without asking at some point you have ridden over the spine of one of these curbs like I am right here and you've spun. Some cars are more forgiving for it than others. The Atenza, you can do this quite easily without a problem. Do this in the Citroen or the Megane wrong, they will kill you. So what's the key? What's the solution? The moment you are riding the top of the spine, you have to straighten up the steering. If you turn whilst on top of the spine, you're going to spin. Sounds simple, but it's all about timing. Next corner, the quadruple apex corner. Josh actually does a really great job here. His line is good. I'll explain the line in the replay in a second. For now, I've got the cars reset here at the split, so you can see that he actually doesn't lose much time to me here. The main issues are not enough track width and slowing the car too much with the brake. So let's take the telemetry forwards, and you can see the net time loss in the entire corner actually only comes down to about a couple of car lengths, which, considering I'm currently P14, something like that, and Josh is in the 9,000s, this is impressive. This is seriously impressive. So looking at the brake traces again, we see that same bad habit of extending the braking for too long. Again, Josh is in blue here, I'm in yellow. Brake harder and trail brake more aggressively to get more rotation. It's the rate of release of the brake pedal that affects the rotation. A faster rate of release, i.e. faster trail braking, will get more rotation. A slower rate of release, slower trail braking, dragging the brake pedal, will induce understeer. Both are correct in the right situation, both are wrong in the wrong situation. It's about knowing what to do in a given situation. You can see here, looking at the brake trace, that Josh has this same habit of braking hard, then immediately trail braking and dragging it out for an elongated, extended period of time. Whereas I brake harder and then trail brake more aggressively out. And if we look at the exit speeds, by the time we're both off of the brake, this is why he's going 3 miles an hour slower than me. So what Josh needs to do here is just use the curb. He's on the road, he's on the track, but we need to use the curb right up to the spine. Don't go on the spine, use all of the curb except for the spine. By doing that, you widen the track. That allows you to carry more speed and straighten the line more. Doing it Josh's way tightens the track, it narrows the track, it means you have to slow the car down more because you have to use more steering input because the line can't be as straight. He does a good job on this apex. You don't really want to go on the curb, you just want to get close to it. And then the rest of the line is actually pretty good. I'll explain the line, the 4 apexes, and how you're meant to take them from my replay in a moment. Gets a little bit of a bad bounce there. I'll explain how to fix that. If you ever hit that curb, that apex curb, and the car sort of bounces and slides, I'll explain how to fix that in a second. Otherwise, I think it's his strongest corner on the track. So looking at this from my replay, you can see how much of the track I've used. You can actually see here that I have literally gone right up to the spine. You want to touch the spine, you don't want to ride on top of the spine. I got a little bit of a slide on the way in, not intentional, but it's fine. I managed it without losing any significant time. You're not really trying to do that in this corner. That's a mistake. The concept of this corner, the principle of this corner, there's 4 apexes. You want to hit, miss, hit, hit. So we've hit the first apex. You want to go right up next to it. Don't actually go over it. Just go up to the white line. You want to miss this one. The car needs to be just right of the middle. about a car's width from the apex is where you want to be. Now let's talk about how to not get a bad bounce, how to not let the car skip. Over this curb, it's all about your steering input. The more steering input when you hit this curb, the more the car is going to bounce. The less steering input, the better. Now you can see from the red dot there that I am steering. You can steer over this curb just fine. The main reason that Josh gets a bad bounce on this curb is all because he doesn't set up wide enough. He doesn't use the curb coming into the entire sequence. What that does is it gives you a slightly wider entry and means that your car is slightly more rotated at this point, and that prevents the bounce. Okay, final corner. It probably comes as no surprise at this point that the braking mistake is the same. Josh needs to brake later, which will force him to stay harder on the brake for longer, then trail brake out quicker and more aggressively. Looking at his trace here, you can see again that he brakes far too early, and because of that he is forced to trail brake out far too early in order to prevent slowing the car down too much. And again, that results in riding the brake far too deep into the corner. His line isn't bad, but he needs to bring more speed into the corner and veer off a little bit more. You can see here that I go deeper, rotate the car more aggressively, and that allows me to power out more aggressively. How do you do this then? Treat it as one corner, not two. And then after that, it's the same advice as the hairpin. Brake later, let the brake go earlier, and coast to rotate the car. So if we zoom in here a little bit, you can see that I let the brake go earlier, and this dotted line is where I'm coasting to rotate the car. And if you look at the orientation, if you look at the trajectory of the cars right now, you can see I've got a lot more rotation. And that in turn is why I can get on the throttle so much more aggressively. Most of your throttle control problems are actually a lack of rotation. So this is Josh's braking point, and I bet if I asked Josh, again, this is 700 hours of coaching, I bet if I asked Josh, he would tell me that he thought he was braking at the 100-meter board. Okay, so take a mental screenshot of this. And here's my braking point. That is braking at the 100-meter board. Josh was all the way down there. And this is where Josh releases the brake, which again, to the untrained eye, you would probably think that that's early. If we put the camera roughly about halfway, there we go, you would probably think that this is quite a sufficiently early brake release, right? But again, let's take a mental screenshot, a mental photograph of where the car is. And this is my brake release point. So let's have a look at the difference. There we go. So Josh's car was right here. So about 2 car lengths earlier. Again, you can see that on the telemetry, but the telemetry doesn't have the right visual impact. It doesn't have the right educational value to the untrained eye. So use telemetry, yes, please, by all means. It is the single best tool for improvement in motorsport, period, not just sim racing. But if you can't visualize what the telemetry is telling you, use the replays until you can visualize what the telemetry is telling you. So how do we fix this corner? The braking point and the brake release point are intertwined. They become directly connected. If you brake too early, you will stay on the brake too late. If you brake later, you will be able to release the brake earlier. It will take practice, but what happens here, I am convinced, is that you know subconsciously that you're slowing the car down too much. And that's why you start trail braking too early into the corner. I'm not just talking to Josh here. I'm talking to anyone who does this, and most people do this in slow, tight, acute corners. This is the major problem in 90-degree acute corners and hairpins. People brake too early and trail brake too early. And I believe that subconsciously you know you're slowing the car down too much, which is why you trail brake too early to increase the speed of the car into the corner, which in turn is the reason you end up staying on the brake too late rather than letting it go. And the key to all of it, as I said at the hairpin, is where you brake in the first place. Brake later, bring more speed into the corner, trail brake out more aggressively, let the brake go earlier, and coast to rotate the car. Let's look at the coast. There we go. And where am I on the throttle? Just like the hairpin, I am literally, not metaphorically, literally on the throttle when Josh is getting off of the brake. Combine that with more rotation from the trail braking style and the coast, and that's why I can power out of the corner more aggressively. Guys, if you have watched this series from the first one, you should start noticing some patterns and trends in people's mistakes. Most people don't brake late enough into hairpin chicanes and tight corners. Most people don't change the trail braking style for the given corner type. Check this video here if you want a deep dive on that one. Most people don't use the whole track. Most people don't let the brake go early enough and coast up to the apex. Most people think their corner exit issues are throttle control issues when it's actually a lack of rotation and correct apex speed. And most people don't analyze and compare. Very few people can get quick intuitively, relying purely on instinct and talent. Those that do usually can't explain what they did. You ask them how they got quick and they just say they tried harder. It works if you're a natural talent. For the rest of us, me included, if you want to push beyond your natural plateau, you have to leave no stone unturned. Regular analysis and comparison is essential. Targeted training to undo bad habits is essential, because those bad habits will fight you hard. You can exceed what you believe is possible. I have helped too many students do just that for me not to believe it. But you must be willing to step outside of your comfort zone to do it, which means to some extent that it will begin to feel a bit more like work and less like a hobby. Whether you're willing to do that is a decision only you can make. And if you choose to play the game casually, I support that decision too. Guys, if you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. Now you know what you got to do. Get out of here and go race.